County have reached an agreement on a stadium finance resolution. What that would mean is the Glazers give $5.9 million a year for the next 30 years. An additional $8 million a year would come from a 5% rental car tax. The hurdle with that is it's been approved by the County Commission and the City Council, but they need to have that voted on, and a referendum starts with a vote by the State Senate tomorrow. That is expected to be rejected. If there is no agreement by May 20th, an agreement between the Bucks, the city, and the county, this whole idea of a new stadium is dead. I asked Joel Glazer what that means for the future, and he said, we must look at other options. That means Orlando, Los Angeles, or Cleveland. Obviously, they want to stay here. When they agreed to buy the team, they thought that they would be here for the next 30 years, but if they don't get the new stadium, and we've heard this refrain all around the country, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could be the last team out of here. And it's funny because I just ran into Tony Dungy, and I asked him about the situation, and he said, and to his credit, this has not impacted he, his staff, their ability to attract free agents. The only thing that bothers Tony Dungy is he can't buy a house here because he doesn't know where he's going to be living a year from now. Mike, back to you in New York.
And Andrea, that's true with not just coaches who move around, but a lot of players as well. You talk to some guys around the league, especially with the Seattle situation, some players who've been there a few years. Where do you buy your house? Up in the Northwest, or do you buy down in California, where the rumors were Seattle moving to Anaheim? Why are these players thinking that? Well, they've got signing bonuses to spend and put down a nice down payment on a new home. The big signing bonus, one factor of the days after the draft. Nick Bakay looks at that.
The average signing bonus for a rookie picked in the first round, about $1.2 million. Now, I know most of you would probably besmirch yourselves in public for the .2 alone, but you think a seven-figure income is one big ride down Easy Street in a white stretch limo? Perhaps with curb feelers, static straps, the champagne flowing. Think again, Cappy. Let's break it down. $1.2 million in a year in the life of an NFL player. Taxes, right off the bat, Uncle Sam gets half, that's 600 grand. Then you've got agent commission, that's 5% of the gross, make that 60 grand. Mortgage, probably about 22 grand a month. Double that for the house of a friend who may one day drive you down the 405 in a white Ford Bronco, 44 grand. Booster payback, somebody bought you that Testarossa when you were a student athlete, 100 grand. Money means memberships, and they don't come cheap. The Platinum card's out, Uranium card's in, $2K a year. The local Havana Cigar Club, $1,500. Big Man Shoe Club, $5,000. Custom-tailored suits from Lummox and Portly, $15,000. Tally these up, and we're already down to $827,500, and it is only the third quarter. Membership in your team's local Tryst Palace, $2,000, which brings us to bail bondsmen. Prorated DWI, a battery, and a couple of Vice Sting hush money payoffs over 12 months, $89K. But if you're hiring a bail bondsman, you might as well hire a PR firm and put the proper spin on why you're hiring a bail bondsman. $3K factored over 12 months, 36 grand. The inevitable failed restaurant, $200,000. The same heartbreak I endured when Nick Bakay's Manly House of Meat went belly up. Ouch. Tattoos, $2,000. Jewelry, $75,000. Rottweiler's off-leash training, $36,000. Miscellaneous hush money, $50,000. That leaves you with a grand total of $78. Wow. They say it takes money to make money. Well, it takes a lot more money to keep money. Bottom line, who knew it? These guys play for the love of the game. And I think that's beautiful. Back to you.
Okay, Nick, thank you. So let's look at the signing bonuses and how these guys were spending that money, as Nick just detailed the money. This is just for linebackers, and you see the importance and maybe the evolution of Jimmy Johnson's defensive philosophy, going to more teams, thus the importance of linebackers in those schemes and the value that these players get, starting with Biscuit Cornelius Bennett, who moved from Buffalo to Atlanta, and there was almost a chain reaction. He moved to Atlanta, so Buffalo had to sign Spielman, so Detroit had to sign Brooks, and the Giants are still looking for linebackers to fill their holes.
That's usually the way it falls, though. But you look at Dave Campo said it best. The way the linebackers play dictates how well your defense plays. And when you got guys, 90% of the guys on that list that you just showed can run very, very well. And you take the Dixon Edwards and the guys from Dallas, you factor those in. You've got to keep your linebackers if you want to keep your defense together.
Talking about the Cornelius Bennett, $5 million. Atlanta this year, signing bonuses, $14.5 million. In 1989, their entire payroll was $15 million. Some of the changing economic aspects of the National Football League. The draft has another 40 picks to go. We are in round 7, and here are the final 2.
We're interested in you. We may pick you in this round. If we don't pick you in this round, then we want to try to sign you as a free agent. After the draft is over, management will then call the player's agent to try to get them signed so they can get there. It's important to get the right kind of free agents. You've been on the road recruiting for the last 2 months, scouting players. You've developed a little bit of rapport with these players. Have the coaches call them, try to get them in.
Mike, it's recruiting season now that the draft is over in these war rooms.
Well, it really is recruiting. Gil Brandt used to be at the Dallas Cowboys, really set it up pretty well. He'd have people at different homes around the country. He'd hire high school coaches or people that he knew, and they'd be ready to give the bonus right away to the free agents. So they were really ahead of times.
You couldn't quite do that in college recruiting, right? Have a guy right there and slap the bonus down.
Well, some guys did.
Everson Walls was a guy, I believe, that they got in a free agent market. That was back in a 17-round draft. Now it's even more important to do in a 7-round draft, Mike. But if you're a guy sitting at home, and the fans would assume it's the last round, they've waited a long time, these players are all holding their breath, hoping that the phone rings, hoping they get drafted. Not true?
Well, I think that right now the kids and the agents, they want to make sure they go to the right team. It's important that they go to a team they feel really comfortable with. Again, the coaches have been on the road. The scouts have been talking to these guys. They need to go to the right situation. Right now, the right situation means that a young man could make the 53 or the 58, which is the developmental team roster. So it's important you go to the right situation.
So you might pretend to be excited about getting drafted as opposed to being a free agent, but deep down you know it's better to be able to pick and choose.
Chris, I was going to say, the only guy that's waiting to be picked is the last guy so he can go to that Disneyland parade.
That's right, Mr. Irrelevant.
That's right. He's
who will
important
it be?
now, yeah.
Stay tuned to find that out. But one guy who we've watched slide, a junior who came out and he's watched, I believe, 7 of his offensive teammates at Penn State, an incredible number, already get drafted, is Freddie Scott, Mike.
Freddie Scott had a great year the year before, and last year with Wally Richardson at quarterback and not having the kind of throwing year that they had the year before, Bobby Ingram on the same team. He dropped a few balls last year, and I think he's just dropped it. He's a guy that should have stayed at Penn State.
We did have his degree. He had graduated, but you say stay around from a football standpoint to get that year of exposure.
Without a doubt, he should have stayed.
You talk about some awesome amount of talent at Penn State. With all those players getting drafted from all that offensive team, Mike, Freddie Scott still out there. And when you consider that last year, 3 of the top 9 picks in the draft were Penn State offensive players, Joe for sure has had some talent there in recent years. What about, as the draft winds down, we've talked a lot about him, Tommy Frazier. Is he a guy, Mike, if you were sitting there and had those bonuses ready to go, that you'd grab up as a free agent?
Well, I think what you would probably need to do with Tommy is bring him into your campus, talk to him before you could possibly sign him. You're only allowed to bring a player back to the mini camp if, in fact, you want to sign him. So they need to bring him back and talk to him and tell him what your plan is. If you like Tommy Frazier as potentially a quarterback or an athlete, lay out the plan that you have in mind for him. That's more of a long-range plan than being on the team next year.
May have to do a selling job to him. There may be some team willing to give him that bonus right away, though.
Well, I think without a doubt somebody's going to do that. Now, the medical report that came over today from Jerry Punch probably has everybody checking that out. But I think as soon as they check it out, see that he could play, somebody will take Tommy Frazier.
That's in the event that he is not selected in the remainder of the 7th round. Our gavel-to-gavel coverage will continue. Does Mel Kiper have the honor of hitting the gavel at the close of the draft? We'll return to Connecticut and to New York when we continue.
3, 2, 1, we're away.
And our draft coverage rolls on. Let's take a look at the last 6 picks. While we were listening to Mike, and Chris, another player from the gangrene defense at Oregon, Jeremy Asher, the linebacker, going to the Washington Redskins. As teams move through this 7th and final round of the draft, there are 37 more selections to be made. And as you saw, last year, Derek Holmes taken by the Buffalo Bills in the 7th round. So you can have an impact with what you do here in round 7. Speaking of Buffalo, let's get a look now. Division by division at the National Football League, kind of give you a midseason report card on these teams. Buffalo won the division at 10-6, and they still look like a strong team at 10-6, Mel.
Well, they had a great draft last year, Mike, and I think they've come back. John Butler hasn't had another outstanding selection process. Eric Moulds is an outstanding receiver after the catch. Gabe Northern can come off that corner. He's a little undersized, but good outside rusher. Matt Stevens could turn out 3 years from now, when you look back, to be a tremendous choice in the 3rd round if he has come back completely from that knee injury. Sean Moran's a little undersized, more of a special team or situational guy, but I really like Jackson and Neal as late-round steals, and Ziegler can play center or guard, so he's a decent backup type.
And free agency-wise, Buffalo has done a very solid job in adding wide receivers. Now the questions will become with Bill Brooks and Andre Reed. Sterling Sharp, a team that caught your eye in this 2-day draft.
Well, I have to go with my old coach Lindy and Fonnie and the Indianapolis Colts, and they took the best receiver in